Oh, yeah. Let me see.
Oh, and I didn't mean to be in the shot. I was trying to engage.
Yeah, we know that. That's why I said do it. Oh, there we go. Let me see.
Oh, and I didn't mean to be in the shot. I was trying to engage.
That's why I did. Yeah. All right. So we back.
What you wanted to chop it back?
Nah, I got you. I got you. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that everything is copacetic on the. That's the Facebook. Let me make sure the YouTube is good.
One check, 1 2 1 2. I hope I'm coming through. Don't.
Oh, let me see. Yep. All right, we good. Okay. So with that being said, we just gonna go ahead. We appreciate everybody who are already in the chat in the show. Thank you. Please hit the like button, the share button, the comment button. We appreciate y'all because I did not. And thank you for everybody who dropped in and said that you could not hear any audio. Thank you. We appreciate that because I just got into kind of a zone and a rhythm talking. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump back a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and read the article. We are talking about, for those who did not hear, we're talking about America's Nurse. We're talking about Black women and how the heroism of Black women in terms of continuously saving America throughout its history is not reciprocated, and the effect that that has on the Black family unit as a whole, as well as Black women specifically. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and jump back into the article that I had from Washington Post really quickly. Black women say to Democrats, don't make us do it again. This is from Taylor Crumpton. And as we get down into it, it says Black women say Joe Biden, which I agree with 100%. So with that being said, we move down further. With our support, the president-elect will be preparing a powerful speech about how, despite his defeat, the nation needs to stand together as a united people to blunt the effects of President Trump's white supremacist reign. Instead, thanks to win's power largely by the turnout in places like Detroit, Atlanta, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia, Biden and the first Black woman to serve as vice president, Kamala Harris, are preparing to take office. But it's a sure bet that even though Donald Trump will be gone after January, the social conditions for Black citizens will remain largely the same because you cannot vote out white supremacy. Because as we both, me and you know, Kamala may have said it jokingly, but Joe Biden is a white supremacist, is a racist. He just delivers it differently. And I'll say not both of us, I'll speak for myself. Joe Biden is a racist, and that's no backsies.
That's no backsies.
It's the lifeblood of our nation's political institutions in the insidious undercurrent that absolves the new president-elect of his 1994 crime bill, a historic piece of federal legislation and increased funding to law enforcement agencies throughout the country. During this campaign, Biden had apologized for his previous actions, contextualized the social conditions of the early 1990s, and pledged for forgiveness from Black Americans, specifically Black women. Despite mass incarceration affecting Black men at higher rates, but nevertheless still affecting Black family and leaving those women alone to actually have to fend for themselves for petty drug offenses and crack cocaine that was put into the community by our own federal government. So as we get down to here, we go into Patrice Cullors and Alicia Garza, the co-founders of Black Lives Matter, along with Opal Temete. Hopefully I pronounced that right, pledged to vote for hers, but they also promised to hold her accountable for her tough on crime history in California. Charlene Carruthers, the founding national director of BYP 100, the Black Youth Project 100, voted for Biden and promised to organize around actions to abolish the Supreme Court. Angela Davis, a world-renowned activist, scholar, academic, and prison abolitionist, emphasized the need to vote Trump out. But she still expressed some disinterest in the Biden-Harris ticket, which contradicted her abolitionist political beliefs. If we want to continue this work, we certainly need a person in office who will be more amenable to our mass pressure, she said. And to me, that is the only thing that someone like a Joe Biden represents. But we have to persuade people to go out and vote to guarantee that the current occupant of the White House is forever ousted. I do not agree with Angela Davis on that point, as I believe Joe Biden is a very firm racist. He continues to want to work across the aisle with Republicans and GOP members who have shown to be against us as a group. And she goes on to say, I've had enough and my life has only just begun. Every 4 years, the Democratic Party looks to me and countless Black women to save it. Our white women counterparts are held to the same standard, especially not the 53% of them who voted for Trump in 2016, which was higher this election. White women are granted forgiveness for their infidelity and wooed all over, again, each election, while Black women are expected to remain loyal and faithful. It's not a burden I want to bear. My ancestors did not bear me into the world so I can put a white man into a position of power over a system that will inevitably harm me and my loved ones. Speaking to Black family, the Black women who give me strength are not the ones in the halls of Congress, or even the ones preparing to move, or even the one preparing to move into the vice presidential mansion, but the ones in the streets. And so with that being said, you know, she talks about being loyal, and overly faithful. And we see as she put it, the infidelity of white women and how
just for a quick second.
Go ahead.
I want to say it's not just the polling place, but also the pulpit in which Black women loyalty is being abused, but it's okay. I'll get to that later.
This is true. But with that being said, you have Black women, you have Democrats, you have America, you have the exploitation of their labor, of their presence, of their forgiveness, of their loyalty. How should Black women moving forward as it pertains to giving these qualities and values without reciprocity as it relates to America and its own families? And then on top of that, if you could speak to some of those components that you highlight in your white paper.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to be mindful and not ignore the fact that there's not a Black woman in this room. So that my perspective when I wrote the novel, the novel's coming out, but wrote the white paper, America's Nurse, I used that language of America's Nurse and using the language of medical for a reason. And the reason I use that, because initially it bothered me when I heard Black women save America or save democracy. It's like, no, Black women actually nurtured democracy. And if you look at, like, especially the work of Dr. Stephanie Jones Rogers, they were her property to further Taylor Crumpton's division amongst feminism, or how sexism in America has affected or affected white women differently than it has affected and affected Black women. So when you look at Dr. Stephanie Jones Rogers, they were her property. You see how the different labors of Black women were used. You had the reproductive labor of Black women, as in they can produce more slaves. Then you have that's when you also get into how this pro forma or this business custom becomes a law, because we know about the slave master and everything else, where the child's freedom status becomes the condition of the mother. So you have the reproductive labor to produce more slaves. Then you have the sexual labor of gratifying other people's desires and pleasures. Then you have the labor of actually being a person that can pick cotton and do things, so the industrial labor. Then you have the domestic labor of being a wet nurse, especially in the antebellum South, that married the up and downstairs that you see inside of domestic life in England, meaning that wet nursing or milk siblings, meaning Black women who had children, were also using their Black breast milk to nurture white children. And then you have the labor of being inside of a house, or any familial or social labors. So that's 5 labors. Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm missing one more. The medical labor, in which you look at Harriet Washington's medical apartheid, and you see how Black women, especially through being midwives, teach how to deliver children, so you have the medical history and so forth of Black women, and more importantly, you have the medical experimentation on Black women that informs the medical history of America. So when you look at those 6 labors, those are just 6 labors. Before we even start to talk about 6 labors, 6 expectations, before you even begin to talk about the person that is aware that this is happening to them. So you're aware that these 6 things are demanded of you before you even get into what you demand of yourself to be happy. So I use the nurse as a way, because it's not a motif that goes throughout, it's just a way to catch attention. But I use that language because you see how Black women have nurtured and grew America from womb to breast, from breast to mind, as Dorothy West puts in The Living is Easy. Women do the hard part, the thinking part, the mind part. You see how they don't get the as you say, the reciprocity. As a nurse doesn't get the same respect as the doctor. The doctor gets the respect, but the nurse is the one who's taking the temperature. The nurse is the one who's coming and doing the check. The nurse is the one delivering the emotional labor needed to help people heal. And that's where I see America, Black men included, constantly asking Black women to deliver the emotional labor of what it takes to economically move in America.
Yeah, and I think, and I'll say for Black men, I think it's a different conversation as to what Black women give to America versus what Black women give to Black men, because we're all in this oppressive system together. A lot of the reasons that Black women are the most unprotected is because when you talk about patriarchy, and this is where I don't necessarily agree with intersectionalism as it's practiced, because it doesn't account for the fact that I, as a Black man, or any man who sits outside of the institutional infrastructure, quote unquote patriarchy, is penalized. And therefore, I think women, especially Black women, are primed to take those seats, take those places of branding. As we spoke about earlier, it's like, look, when things go awry in America, there's usually a Black woman placed at the helm. We'll get into an example later, but the issue with that is that I think in that discussion and in that discourse, Black men get treated as white men when we are not white men. And the only reason that you have particular Black men who function in a certain way is because they believe that they are.
Yeah.
And they believe that they have that agency.
Black skin, white mask.
Absolutely.
Chocolate covered Negro.
Yeah.
Like,
and so what happens in that is that you do have an overabundance of asking, but the question that I ask not just to Black women, but to you as well, is that with all of the things that have transpired, with all of the things that have taken place, with everything that they feel as though they've given, because again, I'm not here to debate about what a person has perceived that their perceived value, but based on that and our socio-political ecosystem, why is it that Black women continue to be so unloyal? Because what I heard in the election was loyal to.
Oh, I got you.
Because what I heard during the election was, and I apologize for that hiccup, but what I heard was Black men got attacked because we said, nah, I'm not really here for it. Y'all can fight that fight on your own. Or, you know what, I'm just going to do a protest vote for the people who aren't necessarily as savvy. I'm not going here to condemn anybody, but why is it that they don't come over to the ideological space of the Black man in terms of we feel their pain? We are hurt by them being exploited by institutions that care not only for us, but we know they don't care for them. And we only know that they're in a position because they are willing to be loyal to an institution that is not loyal to them.
That's a bit of Sophie's choice at that point. That's a bit of King Solomon. And again, I'm not a Black woman, I don't speak on behalf. And if anyone in the DEI spaces, diversity, equity, and inclusion spaces, if you work in that space and you ask me about Black women, my response to you is going to be, ask a Black woman. And the reason I say that is because in the back, socially speaking, Black men and Black women are not socialized in the same spaces. We as children are, but again, let's speak about economically speaking. And part of the America's Nurse is me going through some background, because you know how I do in the white papers. So let's take 1899 Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania report done by W. Du Bois, the Philadelphia Negro. And then the Philadelphia Negro, he does a survey. I'm thinking of page 105 right now, and with 73% of 283 Black women from the ages of 10 to 20 was in domestic service. Then you have, when they're over 20, overwhelmingly of these women are in domestic service. So what does that mean? So we talked about the Black men, because we talk about Black men, and of course in the first two white papers, because that's what we start off with, ourselves, and it's also from our perspective, because we also know that sometimes it's important for us to shut up. But what I was getting into is that when you look at the antebellum South and this mythological North, and to get to your question about the loyalty, what's being exploited is that Black women are stuck in this juxtaposition. How, if they're not going to hire, because this is the whole plot of Good Times, if they're not going to hire the man, who got to work? I got to work. Because they're willing to hire me, but they hire me for pennies. They hire me for pennies on a dollar. He thinks that, and I love Nikki Giovanni when she talks in the anthology of the Black Woman 1970 and Tony Kincaid, when she talks about how the hurt of not being able to love somebody because there's a little bit of shame and humiliation there. The loyalty is a part of faith. Because if you, in democratic spaces, only liberal spaces, those are the spaces that give this symbolic gesture of, yes, we're going to hire Black women. But for me, we should be at the point of we're not, and this is, I believe, where Beyonce gets her political economy, is that we're not asking to be hired. We're not asking to be put on. We have put in enough work to direct our direction in which we want to go. And that loyalty, because we know in America is kind of get down or lay down, you have to pick a party. So in picking the Democratic Party, it gives room for narratives that are more diverse than the GOP and the Republican Party does. Because the Republican Party likes to say that America is white, but using coded language of the dog whistle language of American, or the patriot. So you got to kind of whitewash yourself when you go into some conservative spaces. Not all, some conservative spaces, because the Americana
is the same liberal spaces.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm right now, I'm walking the tightrope to kind of make this this almost false dichotomy, because it really is the false dichotomy of white spaces. Because what I'm getting to is that in the economic system, especially when you think about how it works in the rural and urban divide that we have, not always, most of the time it comes down to we need the Black people to decide which economic system they want. Take the Civil War. Do they want slavery? Are we going to have slavery, fight for the Confederacy, or are we going to have the mechanized industrial North? So fight for the Union. What did the Union offer? What is the the proclamation really offering? Not economic. Emancipation Proclamation. What does it really offer? It offers freedom to Black people held in rebellious states.
And I think that, to her point that she made, is that you can't necessarily vote out white supremacy.
Yes.
Because what you're talking about is the unfortunate reality that, again, even when we talk about Donald Trump and Joe Biden, which one, and not the economic systems, but what delivery of racism do you want?
And how you live under it.
Exactly. And so the troubling and problematic issue that we face as we come into that is, yes, you pick a side, but you're still loyal to a whole ideology.
But here's my thing. Loyalty comes into having a sense of agency and autonomy. Part of being Black means you don't have agency, you don't have autonomy. So it's not loyal to necessarily ideology, but loyal to a hustle.
This is where I'll disagree, in the sense that because if I accept that, I can absolve everybody.
No, you don't. No. Well, here's why I say never absolve people of their hustle. Their hustle defines who they are. What you're willing to deal with and what you're willing to lay down with defines who you are. So that's what I mean by that's what they're loyal to. But the way you do it, because we don't give enough credit to the Black women who dissent from the common Black line. So we will call her a bitch or a hoe or nappy-headed this because her nails ain't painted, her ass ain't fat and everything else. She looking scruffy because she actually going to work doing the day-to-day grind the same way we doing the day-to-day grind, but she don't get the same support as the one that's, oh, I'm a bad bitch. She don't get that support. So we, like Plies talked about, how was we as Black men who have a different relationship to Black women, how are we going to put our efforts and support and go like, I don't want that shiny shit. I want somebody that really understands what it is, the economic position is. I want them to sit down and have, like, we can have some barefoot wine, and we're talking about real things, and we're talking about how we're going to move forward. We can plan and strategize about how to make a sanctuary in a world in which that wants none of us to have peace. You got to kind of, for me, because I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm agreeing with you in the sense of we can't let that be the dominant Black woman, the dominant figure that says, I want to go along with the corporatism.
The majority?
The corporatism. Is this corporatism? Let's call it what it is, because it's corporatism. If we're having someone that's talking and saying, no, I'm not going along with the corporatism, then when someone says, she's a pick me, I as a Black man, I gotta go, what makes her pick me? Why is she a pick me? Because she disagrees with some of you? Because her viewpoints are different? That's what makes her pick me? So you mean to tell me you're shaming her, but you want me to uplift you?
So what you're saying is that we have to protect and afford provision for Black women who get attacked by other Black women who are attached to corporatism.
Yes.
I would agree with that 100%. But with that being said,
I'm listening.
that means that we also have to move away from this idea in political marketing around Black girl magic and all of these catch-alls, because as we see in California, even here in DC, you have people who, or Black women who don't necessarily have a resonance with the average Black woman because they are affluent themselves. And like you said, that's not an indictment on you per se, but it does speak to who you are, where you are, and the framework that you have to develop solutions for a group who you have not really an extensive relationship to, because I think that's where the pick-me's and all of those different slanderous terms come from.
Yes,
I'm not a part of it. I can't speak too much. It's horrible. But if you can pull up the Alexander technique, this is going to be a great segue into it. This is the podcast. You just go to the podcast. The reason why I'm asking him to pull up the Alexander technique is because this is I can't remember her first name, but Dr. Alexander was the first Black woman to get a PhD in economics. Like we're talking early. I can't necessarily remember the time. It was the Economist work. It's a podcast with an economist called the Alexander Technique. And what's important about that is that this is a real life example that predates not only my inception, it predates the inception of my mother. And it shows a Black woman who was arguing for the economic enfranchisement of not just Black women, but the Black community, and going through the different techniques needed in the different ways that Black people can be effective in moving forward. Why that's important, because, and I bring that podcast inside of the white paper as well. There we go. I bring that podcast in the white paper as well to show that there's a history, a very long history of Black women being scholars. Like there's no way that you can talk about anything in Black history, anything about Black liberation, anything involving Black anything, and not have a well-articulated, well-reasoned, focused discussion on the Black problems that Black people face that is inclusive. Think of mother scholar healer Alice Walker in Search of Our Mother's God in 1980. Thank you, Autumn Zen, for introducing that into my life. I love you, girl. But the reason why I wanted to bring up the Alexander technique, as I said before, is that you have to drive home that Black women aren't magical. It's effort. Pay me for it. It's not magic. That's why I say the luck of the Irish. It's a slur. It's not magical that they wake up in the morning and bust their ass to get a bag. It's not magic. It's work. And the reason I'm going so hard on it is like when you talk about Tiffany Haddish, it's like, you mean to tell me you want Tiffany Haddish to do for free for some exposure? Am I wrong?
I would say you're not wrong.
I'm talking about the deal that they offered her.
Yeah, you're definitely not wrong.
Okay,
I would say the issue with
go ahead.
corporatism.
Yeah.
Because she put herself in that predicament to be lowball.
Because of Monique, and the reason why we're not dealing with Charlemagne the Bump. Because I don't like how he used King Charlemagne or the Frankish kings to say that he's a lord.
You may not even understand that.
I don't care. Charlemagne the Bum, I said it. But my whole point is that if you're going to sit and say Black women saved America, and I'm saying no, they nursed America once more, we need that check. Because only reason I'm able to do this because mama, love you, girl. Seriously, we have a mama, son. Ralph Ellison. We only got Ralph Ellison because his mother was able to do it for him. Langston Hughes gets into how you have the upper Negro Black women that didn't want to let his mother at the party. Then you also have, who else am I thinking of right now? I don't know how many goddamn Black mamas that work their ass off so that their Black sons can have something.
Yeah. So my question to you that I ask is that, You know how I feel.
But it's
My
the loyalty
position on it. But with all of this being said, do Black women need to ask themselves the question and reevaluate their loyalty to corporations and institutions that don't reciprocate in terms of helping them sustain and scale their families? Because it's one thing to survive, but should they reevaluate how? Because again, America is a very complex, institutions are very complex. So you can't, I wouldn't say even in terms of not pulling off completely, but should they reevaluate how they interact with these institutions?
I would say reorganize. And the reason why I say reorganize, again, suggestion, call me mansplaining, I don't care about this one. Because right now I'm talking to the Black woman who understands that she's ousted. Because I hear them, and I hear very practical Black women all the time. Like Rick Ross said, the women be the realest ones. It's the truth. What I mean by reorganize is that, again, there's certain conversations that we as men can't have, but that sisterhood conversation, that conversation about who's going to participate in the covenant of prosperity. Does every Black woman have to be a part of a Greek organization to have access? Does she have to be a Zeta? Does she have to be a Delta? Does she have to be an AKA? Does the Black woman have to aspire to be college graduate, to be respected? Can she be in DC? We all know Grosso. Why isn't sex work or sex workers one of the part of that conversation as well? Because sexual survival, we call it OnlyFans, but sexual survival. Why are we demanding that someone who's an exotic dancer or someone who's a sex worker also have health care, also have, so the state holds people accountable? So to answer your question, I said they should reorganize. But what happens though, the corporatism, because again, as we say, Blackness is not a monolith, we also must admit that women are not a monolith. Every woman is her individual agent. So to answer your question, this is my suggestion. My suggestion is reorganize, and during your reorganization, make the principles clear. Don't make because a lot of Black organizations about access to capital. Make the principles clear so that the principles can't be violated because they're rooted in history, especially when we start talking through the ADOS timeline. They're rooted in history to make the argument, I do not have to put in the work because the work is already put in. I want access to the equity of my foremothers. I want the access to the equity of my forebearers, so I can fully matriculate economically through the institutions of America, not to spite of America, but to actually fulfill America's promise. And if we move on the principle, instead of being so rooted in these individual identities, then we'll begin to see what collaborative and cooperative energy can generate.
Okay.
And if I could add in, I think that women and even men, we have to change our relationships with government, because what happens with women is that there are certain policies that are created by government, such as your Title IX, that almost includes mandates that women be a part of certain things. But what happens is our women latch on to that as well, not understanding that Title IX is not necessarily something that benefits us in the totality. You have federal Pell Grant, another thing that benefit a lot of different people, which allow a lot of women, as you can look at the data, who graduate with degrees, but that doesn't necessarily equal success for the Black family. You know what I mean? So I feel like government created a relationship with Black women that allow a certain access, and it did that through incremental years. So you've seen little by little government conditioning women that we're going to give you certain policies, but when it comes to actually impacting Black families, these policies exist for you to get there, but it doesn't trickle down to help your actual situation.
You know what you're talking about? Claudine. Like Gladys Knight the Pips. I don't play that joint after we done, but you talking about Claudine. I rock with that. I get that argument.
I agree with those sentiments, but for sake of time, we're gonna move forward.
I got you.
And next, what we're gonna get into is what we were talking about earlier is, the Black woman image being used to protect racist white institutions, or not even racist white institutions, but just dilapidated institutions or institutions that are in trouble. And with that being said, we're gonna bring up from NPR, as we talked about last week, the insurrectionists and everything that happened at the Capitol last week, and the abysmal response from Capitol Police. We knew heads were going to fall. Heads did fall. Our mayor and the feds have been in the back and forth, placing blame on who's responsible. But with that being said, it has transpired into the first Black woman being placed as acting chief of the Capitol Police. And so let's get into it just a little bit. An historic first U.S. Capitol Police named Yogananda Pittman as acting chief.
We're going to get our heads chopped for these names.
I'm sorry. I definitely don't mean any disrespect, but
We're get our heads chopped.
I'm sorry.
And you could practice, at least call.
I'm American. Still reeling from the aftermath of the deadly insurrection in the seat U.S. government last week. U.S. Capitol Police have designated Yogananda Pittman as the law enforcement agency's acting chief. She's been with the force since April 2001. Whew, a good 19 years.
That's a whole career.
And was named acting chief on Friday, according to U.S. Capitol Police website. That came 2 days after pro-Trump extremists faced off and eventually overwhelmed security forces of the U.S. Capitol complex. Pittman is the first woman and first African-American to lead the law enforcement agency. USCP confirms to NPR. She assumed the role a day after now former USPC chief Stephen Sun announces his resignation following a mob laying siege to the Capitol, ransacking lawmakers' offices, breaking windows and defacing walls and statues inside the complex. Sun said he was stepping down just hours after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi pushed for his removal. Sun, who has since refuted claims that he did not request National Guard and other security forces ahead of Wednesday's attack, originally said in his resignation letter that his last day on the job was January 16th. I just want to go ahead and get into it because I had posted about Black people were going to be put in these positions, unfortunately, after that coup attempt by our president, and not just our president, but by other lawmakers, by other institutional leaders, because I want to get us also out the mind frame that Trump supporters are relegated to quote unquote poor white trash. As we saw, some of these people were connected to judges, some of these people were connected to other lawmakers, and they had the capacity in which they apparently removed panic buttons from other lawmakers, Ayanna Pressley, AOC's desk.
Oh no, that's dangerous.
They all made bail.
Yeah.
How? These are elected officials. Now, I'm not a huge fan of AOC.
I'm not either, but that's
I'm not gonna wish no harm against nobody, son.
To remove a panic button?
From an elected official, son, at that level?
It's not just poor white trash. But
okay.
With that being said,
I'm freaked out now, bro.
But with that being said,
that explains why we locked down over here. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm listening. That shit's scary.
Yeah, but with that being said, you have a Black woman who's worked in a place for 19 years, and I'm sure who has been putting in the work, or even if not, Donald Trump and white mediocrity rises to the top of America all of the time.
Michael Derry talks about that.
So I'm not even going to get into her qualifications, but
That's another dog whistle.
That's another dog.
That's another dog whistle. I'm listening though.
But she was moved to the helm of an agency that now has a bad brand. We've seen this in different cases.
I'm listening.
Where we see not just Black women, but Black people take the helm of institutions and agencies who have a rather bad reputation, and to, as you said, that diversity, what is it, access and inclusion?
No, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
You know, around that branding and marketing, people like to bring in Black faces to be able to clean up a lot of the bad PR relations.
Yes.
And so with that being said, you know, I don't have anything against this Black woman, first off.
How could I?
Do what you do, and like you said, in surviving and labor and all of those things, I understand that 100% completely. But let's stop and ask ourselves, though. Do we want to keep saving these institutions? Because Black women, I feel you, I respect you, but do you want to stand in the line and help an institution that just possibly collaborated with insurrectionists that you'll be taking the helm of? Because we also, as we covered last week, we saw The Guardian, we saw a myriad of other articles come out saying that white supremacists, quote unquote, have infiltrated our policing, our law, our legislative, our executive. We know this. So with that being said, do you want to provide cover for that? Even if it means making more money. Should we now begin to say, yeah, you know what, I do want the extra 15, 20.
I got you.
But I'm not going to do it.
I got you.
Not for you.
I got you.
Because my respect, my dignity, my loyalty.
I got you.
You haven't even given me enough to come out and protect
I got you.
Like that.
I agree. Thank you, Freckles. You know who you are. Thank you, Freckles, because you know I pulled up Tisha James, the NYAG. We've been talking about it. I didn't get hit to Letitia James, the AG of New York that's suing NYPD for abuses of law. Like if you could just pull up the headline, because that's exactly what they're expecting Black women to do, to run cover. They're expecting them to go out and kind of hush us and tone police. But when you got AGs, again, Freckles, thank you. When you got AGs like Tisha James is coming out like, I'm not doing that. I'm not playing that game. You're not going to get me. I know what it is. I know what you're doing.
I got it pulled up. From New York Attorney General sues NYPD over protests and demands monitor. Letitia James says the police have used illegal and harmful tactics for years and wants a federal monitor to oversee the department's tactics at future demonstrations. Ooh, this type Black woman I want to follow, right?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
That's what when you get the fuck out of Black women way, when you get out of Black woman way, and go get, that's what I'm talking about. When you get out their way, that's what you gotta do. Get out the way. Pick the ones that's for you and get out of the way, because you already charged.
Hopefully don't know other Black women, because you know all these, it's a lot of Black women elected. No, I'm not even talking about, I'm talking about some Democrats too, because they're not just on the GOP side.
Ooh.
Because it gets real dicey and dangerous out here. Because once you start threatening the patriarchy, the people who have been, like you said, bought in to serve the patriarchy, to get their own shares will tear down everybody who stands in the way of it, no matter what color they are.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's an Agent Smith.
I agree.
This is Neo. This is we asking for black women to step up, right? It's right here. Where's the support? Where's the support? We need to be driving home like protect Letitia James. Say her name. Protect Letitia James. Say her name. Protect Letitia James. She's doing what we asking for. Legal precedent within the institution to stop harming who? Us. Following a long legacy of black women champion for who?
She says they did not train, they did not supervise, they did not stop officers who engage in this misconduct, she continued, and they did not discipline them either. Instead, they failed the people of the city of New York. There was ample ability and opportunity for the city and NYPD leadership to make important changes to the way that officers interact with peaceful protesters, but time and time and again, they did not. But yeah, I love it because I bang with Yvette Carnell. So protect Yvette Carnell. Protect all of these black women who come out and speak. But that's where I always ask the question. As a black man, I'm with it. I'm down to rock for black women who want to speak truth to power.
But it also means that when it comes down to that aesthetic and building a family, you can't be with the knucklehead that want the shiny shit. You gotta be with the ones like we can be knuckleheads, we can be dirty, but we ain't gonna die dirty. You gotta be with somebody that's willing to build. Who is the one that said you wrong, Martin? I forgot. There was the civil rights activist. I'm sorry, but she said you wrong, Martin. You wrong. Dr. Cornel West brings up all the time. I don't know. I can't remember. It's not Fannie Lou Hamer. It's not her. But
there's a lot of people.
Shirley, I got Shirley Chisholm right here, bro. Bring your chair to the table. Don't ask for a damn chair. Bring it there. Don't ask these politicians for a goddamn voice. Make your voice heard. And that's the legacy I inherited. And I learned from the black women scholars that I read, Zora Neale Hurston, Dorothy West, Bell Hooks, Lorraine Hansberry, and heard the songs of Nina Simone, who's like images. She thinks she has no beauty. It's like, we need to uplift these voices, or we can't say a goddamn thing. How can we complain? How can we complain and say, nobody cares for me? We got, Letitia James? You got an AG within the institution fighting for you. But you rather go and talk about, oh yeah, these bitches is trash and all this other stuff. Oh, they don't give a fuck about us, bro. They don't give a fuck.
Oh, she a pick me.
And I just put you an AG in your face that's fighting for you. Fighting for you. So I'm saying as a black man, to hold my accountable, you know me, I'm not being around no black man. If I put Letitia James in front of your face and you got something negative to say, you out.
You know me, I like to be objective. I don't mess with black women or black men who aren't principled. If you are willing to your point, be a capitalist and be driven by a dollar, and you hold no principle, you trash to me. Point blank, period. If you can sit here and make,
but again, thank you, Freckles.
Make sense just based on the idea that it makes money, you're garbage, whether you're a man or a woman. Because part of the struggle that I have had with trying to speak truth to power is that I am silenced by women. It isn't a lot of, because I can punch a man in the face. You're not going to really challenge me. You can fight me. You can see me. I have no issue with that. You know me. I like fighting. To some extent.
It's funny because I started laughing like, yeah, we over 18 now, so this is our way of fighting. we gotta speak. We gotta talk shit to power.
OG head buster.
We gotta talk shit to power now.
Women have decorum over me.
Got you.
And when I see, unfortunately, women like Letitia James, Yvette Carnell, or even Angela Davis in her prime, being condemned is usually, if not white people telling me, oh, that's just radical, it's Black women who are tone policing me, saying that, oh, I need to play a game of proximity or capitulate to a Joe Biden. No, fuck him. He ruined my family and your families. I got beef with him because he caused me stress and you stress, not just me. I don't like him because he ruined us, not me, us. And you suffer because of it too. I'm just not capitulating to it. No, the same way y'all had that sentiment about Donald Trump and all of the fuck hims and all of the slanderous things y'all had to say about him is the same way I feel about Joe Biden. I don't care that he speaks nicer to me. You did what you did to my family. You did what you did to my mother, my grandmother, my sister, my auntie, and all of those who have bared the brunt. You took the men out of the household to leave them to fight for themselves. That is the issue. That is the issue that I have with people who capitulate to it, whether you be man or woman. Because I do see their pain. I do understand my mother's pain. I do understand how and why women navigate the way that they do. But what I'm asking of Black women is to look, if you angry and you don't necessarily want to fight because that's not in your nature, and you understand the stress and you understand the swindle, let the men who want to knock heads come in. Help us get in. Let us in, because it's going to be us, not those suit wearing, capitulating bums who y'all love.
The pretty boys.
The pretty boys, the pretty toys, the ones who get played with.
Woo, that's a word.
Pretty toys.
That's a word.
That's a hashtag. Pretty toys. I like that one. Pretty
toe
toys.
to toe. Because again, people say, oh, are you going to lose? I don't care, because it's a
Oh, I
loss
get a
for
good
me
fight.
anyway. If I got to sit here and watch my women, my son, my kids, my community, my cousins, my brothers, everybody else suffer around me, that sucks. I can't enjoy all of this nice shit without, it sucks.
But you know what they call that for us? Survivor.
No, it's not survivor's remorse. I need more people.
But
out
you
there
keep
with
saying
me.
some shit. Go ahead.
But for me, that goes back to men's relationship with the government, specifically Black men. Because whereas women got the Title IX and the federal Pell Grants, we got the 94 Crime Bill. We got those programs that existed in jails taken away. We got a lot of the programs that men used to, well, boys used to be able to enjoy trades within the school systems taken away. So our relationship with government is from a standpoint of, we know we're not going to get anything from it. Whereas the government has conditioned a lot of the women to every so often expect there's some legislation that's going to be passed.
Mhm.
It's going to benefit the totality of women. You all are going to be able to participate, but at the end of the day, it's going to be at the behest of, it won't support you and your Black community and your Black family.
I get you. You come back to that point, and I get what you're saying, and I have a concurrent argument with that one. Is that I wouldn't say women as much as this is what the government tries to define Black women as. Because again, going back to Gladys Knight and the Pips, that song, the Claudine soundtrack, that's exactly what she was talking about. Like, I can't have a husband, a man in the house. I gotta give up this. They say that I'm bad for my kids. And it's like, again, this is where it becomes very important, going to your whole point. You know, I say off camera all the time, we need to be vulnerable with one another. For Black spaces that have the sanctity and to be as acrimonious as we want them to be, for Black love to be the sanctity and as acrimonious as that we want it to be, it has to be a place for intimate healing. A place in which we can say, this is how the world outside hurt me. I'm coming to you all to have my grievances heard, to have my pains validated, and so that I can mourn and weep, not in private but alone, but a lot of us cry on our own. Nikki Giovanni talks about a good cry. And we assume that our mothers cry. We assume that women cry. It's like, I've met more women who come to me because I'm in back. We talked about this the other day in the car, how I lead with feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have a lot of feminine energy because I'm just a very emotional man. I'm a very emotional man, but that's how they take advantage of Terry Crews. I'm an emotional man, but I grew up in the hood. So I know what it means that you have to fight. But we assume that the emotional labor needs to be done by one party. And instead of going, shit, we black. Everybody like this motherfucker gotta cry. If you don't cry, I don't rock with you. And you black, I'm telling you the truth. If you don't cry, if you ain't got a good story to tell me about how the fuck you was crying, I don't rock with you. Why? Because you suppressing your pain.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do it.
It's a lot of that going on.
If anybody wanted to call in, because we about to start wrapping
Yeah, because we just talking a whole bunch of shit right now, but y'all know what I'm talking about.
If anybody wanted to call in, you can feel free. If you're still watching the video, like the video, comment and share. Please, we thank you.
As they do that, I just wanted to wrap up and say what's important. Like the reason I wrote this white paper is because I get long-winded here and I get super long-winded and I get really verbose. But I want a place where we can continue this conversation, but more importantly, we can highlight some of the scholars and the healers that I'm aware of and that you are aware of so that we can have a robust conversation so that we're not just sitting here being performative and saying, oh, you know what, government, you're not helping out black women, so that we can actually begin to build that space and include those voices who don't necessarily want to be seen on camera, but it can come to us in private and say, this is what I would like to see from this space. This is what I would like to offer, and are willing to support and be cooperative in building that sanctimonious healing spaces that black people need.
Okay. And so with that being said, I'm not seeing any callings come through.
Yeah, I copied and pasted into the Facebook.
Did we have any particular comments that was particularly interesting?
No, I'm looking at everything now. They ain't loving us today. Let me see. Oh, 6.
It's still early too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was hoping we get some of them women that's tired of their man watching the game.
So we tired of them watching the game. How many episodes have we talked about that?
I hate that shit. But again, when I say that, I'm the party pooper. Even women call me that.
I want money so I can do what I want.
But it is what it is. Oh, we got
Subtitles.
Yeah, clutch. I'm the party pooper. I never like subtitles.
It's okay. It's nice to see yourself written on things. I feel like I'm on a Jumbotron.
But
Too big for the Jumbotron, huh?
With that being said, man, we got the white papers releasing this week, which will be dropping. We will be having a new website up for everybody to come communicate, engage. I'm really happy about that. That's been a while. Some logistics and going back and forth, things didn't necessarily manifest. I know we got Gilded Sages. This one is going to be the Gilded Sages. And then we'll be adding in some more, paraphernalia.
Paraphernalia, that's
inspired by yours truly, D-Bag Anglo, Inquisitive Q. Then I got some things that's going to be coming as well in terms of images. And so everybody, please stay tuned. Oh, and not just images. If you're watching, if you're in DC, your boy is running for vice president of DC Young Democrats. Go over, look out for that. We're going to be dropping some info soon in regards to that. I need everybody politically engaged because, again, I do this not because just to, get all famous and stuff. I love politics. I love the ins and outs. So I love everybody to, come help us out in doing that, in creating policy, creating, community building and whatnot. I'll have more information on that on the next episode. So with that being said, man, I don't see any calls coming in. We love and appreciate y'all, for everybody who did drop in, for everybody who did tune in. thank you for everybody who told us that the sound was out. I appreciate you because that be happening sometimes. These apps, man, get down and jiggy, and I'm glad y'all saved me a Sunday. So thank you. Thank you. I appreciate y'all for coming in, rocking with us. And, you know, for those who still here, getting past the not speech, I love y'all. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your week. If you in DC, stay away from downtown.
It is trash.
Do not be out here clout chasing, man. This shit is dangerous.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. It's not worth
We
it.
can't post bail.
Hey, look, we ain't got that white racist. But y'all go ahead and be safe, man.